wonderful day. I am healthy and whole. Every way today is going God has blessed me in a beautiful way. There's light in my soul. For God created me whole. What a wonderful day. Today is gonna be a wonderful day. I am healthy, whole, in every way. Today is gonna be a wonderful day. For God has blessed me in a beautiful way. There's light in my soul. For God created me whole. What a wonderful day. What a wonderful day. What a wonderful day. And surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see love in every face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Surely the presence of the Lord is right here and right now. And as we open our hearts and open our minds, we can feel that presence, that power, that guidance, that healing. A feeling of love flowing through each and every part of our being. Our thoughts are quiet. Our emotions are still and yet warm. Our body is relaxed. And we simply know that right here and right now is an opportunity to once again join together. Join together with each other and to feel God's presence. And for this, we are so grateful. Thank you, God. So it is. Amen.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see love in every face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Thank you, Landis. That was great. I appreciate that. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chattanooga Sunday celebration service. My name is Rev Doug Werth, and after being gone for a week, it's great to be back and to see everybody here with those smiles on the faces and those auric glows around everybody. Yeah, it's great. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for Landis, a wonderful job this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
And I also want to thank all the people that are working behind the scenes that make this Sunday service possible. From Terry, who's here at Old Star 30 every Sunday morning setting up the place. And Laura, who's doing our Facebook and the ushers afterwards. It's a marvelous endeavor. And everybody, many people. And I want to welcome all of you who are watching on Facebook this morning. Be sure to And sometimes on mornings like this, on Sunday mornings, there are people who are here for the very first time. And if you're here for the very first time and you'd like to know a little bit more about Unity and perhaps the New Thought movement, we have a special packet of information for you. And there's a piece of paper on the back. It's purple or green or blue or something. And you can fill that out, put it in the offering basket after the service or towards the end of the service, if you would like to receive a copy of our bi-monthly newsletter. So if there is anyone here in the congregation this morning who would like one of those packets, who's here for the very first time, please raise your hand and Terry will bring you a packet of information. We have 10 or 20 of them back there, so just in case. Well, Unity of Chattanooga is part of a worldwide network of Unity churches, and the movement was founded in the late 1800s by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And the Fillmores started studying Jesus' teachings in the Bible in an effort to overcome a variety of personal difficulties. And through research and a personal spiritual practice, what they found was so transformational that they dedicated their lives to teaching what they found, and they called it practical Christianity. Today, Unity is a progressive and inclusive spiritual community, embracing the traditional teachings of Jesus and the modern scientific and psychological principles for a healthy and inspired life. We emphasize prayer and meditation, personal study and growth, and living consciously to make a positive difference in the world as we grow and as we transform our own lives. Prayer is the foundation of Unity. That's where it started, as a prayer group. And one of the things that we like to do on a Sunday morning is have an opportunity, if anyone has prayer requests, to just pray with you and see how affirmative prayer works and feel just the combined support of everyone here. On the way to church this morning, I received a phone call for a special prayer request. So if you just join with me for a few moments, be still and quiet. We bring to mind Gabby, Alex, and Jackson. Alex is the young husband, Gabby is his wife, and Jackson is their 2-year-old son. And as we embrace this family, we see God's presence surrounding them. Take a moment and bring up images of that family in your mind. And you may not know them, but you can simply feel their energy. Surround them with a golden white light of healing and love and guidance. Our prayers this morning are for Gabby. We see her whole and healed, going forth to do what is hers to do with love and with guidance, feeling secure, loving and caring for Jackson, with a strong mind and a healed heart. And so this very morning, we know that God's energy, God's healing love is surrounding the family, and all is truly well. Thank you, God. So it is. Does anyone else have a prayer request? We haven't done this in a while, so I'm sure there's a backlog of all kinds of prayer requests. Anyone else? Well, if there are no other prayer requests, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to point everyone's attention to this blank vision board. Now, as you remember, 2 weeks ago, we talked about our new church home. And your homework was to cut out all kinds of pictures about what that new church home was going to be and bring them up and put them right up here. So in Unity's way of putting a positive spin on everything, it's a blank slate. We can have whatever we want. So I would encourage each and every one of you, and I'm going to talk about it every Sunday, okay? So I'm going to encourage each and every one of you, go through some magazines, go through some newspapers, something, and when you see a picture and you look at it and you say, that's what I want our new church home to be. Cut that picture out and bring it in here, and we'll put it right up on this board. And over the next few weeks and few months, we're going to see exactly what that looks like and help to bring it into manifestation. So with that, let's take a few minutes with a handshake or a hug or a fist bump and greet our neighbor and say hello to somebody perhaps you haven't said hello to before. Let's do that right now.
Oh, yeah, good idea. I could switch to this and get the environment. Oh, you can hear us.
Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Heart is true, you're a pal and a confidant. And if you threw a party, invited everyone that you knew, you will see the biggest giver people. And the heart attached would say thank you.
I'll leave you alone.
Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a friend. Some say it's worth fighting for, at least worth dying for. I'll hold my end of the bargain peacefully. Some say it's about black or white. One is wrong while the other ain't right. They judge a book by the cover they won't read. I ain't claiming to be Jesus. I believe in miracles. I'm shouting out the good news, not preaching your gospel. 'Cause when you add it all up, you'll see how much we'll gain when we realize we're one in the same. I left the sanctuary, dug up all the hymns they buried, searching for the love of life. In the spirit there's liberty, and everybody just wants to be free, praying from the one of peace to save our lives. I ain't claiming to be Jesus. I believe in miracles. I'm shouting now the good news, not preaching your gospel. 'Cause when you add it all up, you'll see how much we'll gain when we realize we're one in the same. Oh, I ain't claiming to be Jesus. I believe in miracles. I'm shouting out the good news, not preaching some gospel. 'Cause when you add it all up, you'll see how much we'll gain when we realize we're one in the same. Great God Almighty, when we realize we're all one in the same. Glory, hallelujah, when we realize we're one in the same.
One and the same. Wow. You know, when I get ready to write a talk, sometimes these things just download. You know, I have to, well, that's a great title, but where do I go from here? And then it slowly begins to, you know, come out. And I got a title a while back. It's called One Mountain, Many Paths. And so I thought, well, that's pretty good. I think I can flush that one out. And one of the things that Penny does is she looks on the website. Once I give her a talk title, maybe a little bit about it, she'll look for a picture so that she can put it on the website. And she came back and she said, well, here's a perfect picture, and underneath the picture was that exact title. So we went on the internet and I looked it up, and there's a book about it, you know, with that title by some doctor with a PhD, all kinds of great remarks. There is another organization out there, a spiritual organization, with that title as the title of their group. It's everywhere. But I didn't read those books, so what you're going to get this morning is just my take on it. And what I can tell you is from my earliest memories, there has always been a spiritual pull behind the everyday events in my life. I've had friends who've always wanted to be doctors, and they went out and they were great doctors. I've had other ones who wanted to be engineers, and they were great engineers. But for me, it always had something to do with spirit and with God and trying to go in the right direction. Maybe that was because I was a rascal in a previous incarnation, I don't know. But there has always been a feeling that there's been something more, a greater understanding, a path to be followed. And these thoughts came in with me, just a little guy. So at age 4, I sat down in my parents' closet amidst all the clothes and started asking questions. And I started getting answers. A gentle voice, a thought really, a reassurance and guidance. That yes, there was a path, there was a greater goal, but not a lot of details. That was nice, but even as a young child, 5, 6, I said, well, where do I go from here? Well, growing up, my parents took me to Sunday school at a local Presbyterian church, and I first learned about Jesus and the wonderful miracles and healings that he did. And there was this almost electric excitement that ran through me when I found out about this. That's it. You know, that's what I'm looking for. I want to be just like him. I want the understanding and the connection to God that he had. That's it. But how do you do that? Well, at age 8 or 9, if you tell the minister that you want to be like Jesus, he looks at you a little funny, and he pats you on the head and just tells you to believe. Well, the Presbyterian church that I attended didn't exactly give a course on that or outline how to do it. No classes about how to pray or meditate. And by the way, meditation wasn't exactly a sanctioned concept back in those days. What I heard was Bible stories and Sunday sermons that somehow left you feeling a little bit better about yourself. It was all good stuff, but it just wasn't enough. I wanted a 1, 2, 3 path that I could follow. Well, in middle school, I was in the Boy Scouts, and I was attracted to the outdoor activities that they had. But woven into the program was the Boy Scout law. 12 character traits designed to teach moral and ethical values. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I can still do it. And the scout oath, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and country, to obey the scout law, to help other people at all times, and to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And always the Boy Scout law, be prepared. They always told us to put a dime in your shoe just for an emergency phone call. It was great. You know, and I liked that. It was a path. There were no sermons about the laws, and I didn't think too deeply about them, but we recited that oath at every meeting after the pledge of the flag, and after a while, it became simply a way to think and to reflect about things. The law, the oath, and the motto underlined a simple program of advancement through a series of ranks with merit badge options that led to the rank of Eagle Scout. Now, if you were an Eagle Scout, you were a master in the Boy Scouts, you know. It was clear, it was an organized path that I could follow, it was exciting, and it was fun. And it was just what I was looking for at that age. I spent every summer in the Boy Scout camps, and when my troop went, I went with them, and when another troop went, I went with them, and when another troop went, I had a great time, and later on I became an instructor for waterfront activities, swimming, life-saving, boating, canoeing, sailing, all that kind of stuff. And it was just a great summer activity. But by high school, I was looking for that kind of program on a spiritual path. They began to merge. And I started looking around, and what I discovered was Buddhism. with the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Now, the Four Noble Truths begin with number one, life is dukkha. That doesn't need much of an explanation, folks. It just means that there's suffering out there, okay? You could substitute other words if you'd like. But number two, there is a cause for that suffering. Number three, the cause is an attachment to thoughts and behaviors which do not serve us. And number four, there is a path leading to the end of suffering and a better way of life. And they called it the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path to enlightenment was very simple. It started with right understanding that our words and actions have consequences, both in this life and the next. Number two was right thought, that our thoughts create our words and actions. Number three is right speech, that our words are creative, so use them wisely. No lying, cheating, and idle gossip. 4 and 5 are very similar. It's right action, which is mostly about actions to avoid. And number 5 is right livelihood. Again, what ways of earning a living and being in the world to avoid. And 4 and 5 are very similar to the 10 Commandments, which is what not to do. And number 6 is right effort, which means guard your senses, be involved with wholesome activities. Number 7 is right mindfulness, guard your mind, pay attention to what you're paying attention to. And number 8 is concentrate and meditate with clear, one-pointed focus. Vipassana and insight meditation was the practice for that one. And this is something that I could sink my teeth into. And once I began to study the Buddhist tenets and teachings, then all of a sudden, Jesus' teachings in the New Testament became so much clearer. I could track them. And as you looked at other similar religions, you could see what Aldous Huxley called the perennial philosophy. It underlines all of them. They were saying essentially the same thing. When I graduated from high school, it seemed like, and I was going to go to college, it seemed like engineering was the right course of study. Most people's dads were engineers or tradesmen, with a skill. So, okay, I'll do engineering. But if you've ever been involved in work that you really weren't excited about, it doesn't go well. It took me 2 years. It took me 2 years and a little encouragement from the college I was in, that maybe you ought to find something else, that sort of thing. It took me 2 years to get into more liberal arts, psychology, and finally, in my senior year, into comparative religion classes. And I just woke up. I embraced it, and those C's and D's in engineering class turned out to be straight A's in this part of it. Outside of class, I was a Buddhist. I read Socrates' dissertations about an examined life well lived. I found and read the inner spiritual wisdom of the Rosicrucians and also the Essenes. Those things came across my path, and I read them. It was incredible. Aristotle's 12 virtues. Now, why 12 always comes up, I don't know, but it always seems to. And Aristotle was especially descriptive of an ethical system of character traits involving prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. Well, when I finally graduated from college, I felt like I had started to find some of the things that I was looking for. But how do you make a living with that? Thanks for the degree, I appreciate it. Where do I go from here? Was the big question. Well, just prior to graduation, I was at a party in a casual conversation with a person that I'd never met before, discussing some of these things and some of my beliefs and findings. And she offered me a book about a group in Illinois that was starting a community based on all these principles and a lot more. So I took it home. I was absolutely fascinated with what I started to read, and I read the entire book in just a couple of days, almost nonstop. And it was exactly what I was looking for. It was that same I found it excitement that I had felt once before. The name of the book was The Ultimate Frontier by Cleo Kushina, and the group was the Stell Group based in Chicago at the time. Well, I called them up and found out that it was for real. This is not a fictional book, that this is actually going on. I flew out for an interview, I was accepted, and a few months later, loaded up my Ford ranch wagon and headed west. And they were a pretty conservative group. You know, they were engineers and they were business people. Pretty much everybody well educated with college degrees. Not a bunch of hippies living in a commune by any means. They'd purchased a large tract of farmland south of Chicago. They had built a woodworking factory and were making industrial and retail products, and laying out a community of houses complete with water treatment plants, power grids, sewer systems, everything that you need. But in their non-working hours, we would get together and they talked about ancient, long extinct civilizations. They talked about the mysteries of life that I was concerned with, and a path for spiritual growth leading to the mastership that Jesus and other spiritual masters had attained. It was everything that was in that book and everything that I was looking for. It was spot on for me. Their teaching and their philosophy centered around a teaching called, where's that number again? The 12 great virtues, which were patience, courage, devotion, charity, kindness, tolerance, forbearance, precision, efficiency, discernment, sincerity, and humility. And as they talked about these things, I noticed the similarities with some of the other things, even the Boy Scouts, that I had grown up with. And it seems like there was a path that was beginning to unfold, at least for me, an educational opportunity. It was called the Lemurian philosophy, based on what they believed were the ethics and the teachings from the first and greatest civilization on the planet, Lemuria, or the continent of Mu in the Central Pacific, which lasted, according to them, 52,000 years before it collapsed into the sea. It was here that I first heard about what we in New Thought today call the laws of mind action and attraction, although they use different terms for it. It was here that they discussed the 12 levels of advancement on this dimension, leading to mastership that all the great spiritual masters had attained. It was here that I first learned about the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky, works concerning the origin and evolution of the universe and humanity, Edgar Cayce's readings on similar subjects, and many other spiritual authors and teachers that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And the interesting thing about it is that it all seemed to fit. I picked up a little bit here, a little bit there, something here, something there, couldn't quite put it all together. And at this time and in this place, it just seemed to go click. It was exactly what I was looking for. I got a job immediately in their woodworking factory, rose quickly to a managerial position, and stayed with the group for 3 years and found answers to a lot of questions that I'd been looking for. But after 3 years, there was tension in the group. There seemed to be power struggles going on. And there was allegations that the group leader was having what we would call misconduct with the wives of some of the members, and that was not anything that I was interested in being involved with. So I decided to leave and go to Chicago to find a new job. And when I was about to leave, a friend of mine asked me what I was going to do in terms of a spiritual practice and a spiritual community. because we were pretty close in that group. And I told her I had no idea. I just want out of here. And she recommended a small Christian denomination called Unity that I'd never heard of, and suggested I investigate it. Well, I thanked her, and of course, in the process of finding a job in Chicago, getting married to Penny, I completely forgot about it. Until about a year later, maybe a year and a half, when I came home from work and I heard 2 one-minute Unity radio spots, and we decided to attend. Now, Penny and I had been looking for a church and had gone to many in the area, but really hadn't connected with anything. And when we went to our first Unity service in the Ambassador East Hotel, congregation about this size, it was another one of those moments that this is it. We found it. We're home. And the rest is history that I've shared many times. Well, Unity, as most of you know, is decidedly eclectic. It's not believe and be saved. And that's probably because our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, were more than a little put off by the fundamental Christian teachings of their day. And they searched far and wide for a truth, for spiritual tools, and an understanding that they could apply in our lives, or in their lives. They searched, and with prayer and meditation and study, found great inspiration in the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament, according to their own interpretations. And they developed a synergy with philosophers and other seekers that today has become known as the New Thought movement. But it wasn't easy. Just as I struggled to find and understand the spiritual laws that govern our growth and progress, and what I found was incremental steps, so did Charles. It was the same thing. Here's part of his story. These are his exact words. 7 years ago, I had my first instruction in metaphysical science. I was much interested, and I took lessons from all the different schools. For a time, I was mentally disturbed by the many conflicting statements about truth and who had it and who didn't, made by the various teachers. The muddle was so deep that for a time I was inclined to ridicule. Yet I could not get away from the evidence of a great power back of the flood of contradictory statements. Neither could I understand why there was so many divisions in so many schools and such an assortment of opinions about what he considered an exact science. I noticed, however, that all the teachers and writers talked a great deal about the omnipresent, omniscient God, who is spirit and accessible to everyone. I said to myself, in this battle, I'll go to headquarters. If I'm spirit and this God they talk so much about is spirit, we can somehow communicate, or the whole thing is a fraud. I then commenced sitting in the silence every night at a certain hour and trying to get in touch with God. There was no enthusiasm about it, just cold, calculating business method. I was there on time every night and tried in all conceivable ways to realize that my mind was in touch with the Supreme Mind. In this intellectual attitude, one can easily understand why I did not seem to get any conscious result. But I kept at it month after month, mentally affirming words that others told me would open the way, until it got to be a habit that I rather enjoyed. However, a time came when I began to observe that I was having exceedingly realistic dreams. After that, I watched my dreams closely and found that there was a wider intelligence manifesting in my sleep than I seemed to possess in a waking state. And it flashed over me one day that this was the mode of communication that had been established in response to my desire for information from headquarters.
He continues, everything which it is necessary for me to know is shown to me, and I have times without number been saved from false steps by this monitor. Again and again I've had mapped out the future along certain lines for months and years ahead, and the prophecies have so far never failed, although I sometimes misinterpreted the symbols which are used. Charles found his path, and he did it through personal effort, perseverance, and seeking exactly what he was looking for. He further comments, when a man aspires to know the Lord and asks for the higher guidance, and at the same time shows a willingness to drop his own narrow personality and come into a broader views of the Spirit, he finds that instead of the Lord being a ruler over him, he is his servant. Not I, but the Father in me does the work, said Jesus. And so every man that willingly lays down his narrow personal prejudices and circumscribed ideas discovers that he really has nothing to do but open himself. He has but to quietly, gently know the right relationship of things in the silence of his own spirit. And the oversoul does the work, just as Jesus said. So how do we do that? How do we follow in those footsteps? Well, in his studies, he developed the 12 powers of man to describe the character and spiritual skill development to open that very door. Once again, 12. And those 12 powers are faith, strength, wisdom, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, release, and love. He matched them with organs in the body similar to the chakra system and corresponded each power with one of the 12 disciples. Now, how he came up with all of this, I have no idea. But he took his inspiration from a quote attributed to Jesus in the New Testament. Truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man is seated on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or child or fields for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. Now that's kind of flowery biblical language, but what he's talking about is a path. That's what he's saying. Now in Unity, we often talk about the powers of mind action and attraction, and we often use them to bring us material things or experiences that we feel will make our life better. And Jesus talked about this too. He said, have faith in God. And if you do not doubt in your heart but believe that what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. So I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe you have received it and it will be yours. But the bigger question is, why do all the major religions and spiritual teachers emphasize character development as opposed to how to get the good stuff? They all emphasize character development. The Sermon on the Mount by Jesus and most of his teachings was all about how to think and how to act, not the techniques of performing miracles. So how come? Why the dichotomy there? Well, I'm reminded of an old Disney cartoon called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Everybody seen that one? Okay. Where Mickey Mouse is the apprentice to the master magician. And he's got a long white beard, and he's got the robe, and he's got the pointed hat with the moon and the stars on it. And the magician asks Mickey to fill a large container with water from a nearby well and gives him a bucket to haul the water. And then he promptly puts his magician's hat and wand down and goes off for a nap. Something I Understand? Well, Mickey doesn't want to do the work at all, so he puts on the magician's hat and he picks up the wand and promptly conjures a nearby broom and buckets to do the work. Well, if we've seen the cartoon, it quickly spirals out of hand, you know. Various animated brooms are all over the place, and the buckets and the water's all over the place, and it's about to flood the whole area and literally carry everything away when the magician wakes up and saves the day. And I don't remember what happened to Mickey. Just as we would never give a loaded gun to a 5-year-old, without proper character development, these greater powers can lead to disaster. And each and every spiritual teacher maintains that as we harness and as we focus our mental powers in a direction that is best, not only for ourselves, but everyone else concerned, then everything else that we need will be provided for us. When speaking about the material aspects of life, Jesus confides, your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But strive first for the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Thomas Jefferson, the primary author of the Declaration of Independence and our third president, knew this all too well. He was a believer in rational thought and self-determination, of character building. He championed human rights, although he owned slaves, and was instrumental in creating the separation of church and state in this country. He believed that religion was a matter between every man and his maker in which no other, and far less the public, has a right to meddle. Following his own thoughts and beliefs, he created his own New Testament Bible by cutting out pages from 2 King James versions and pasting those cutouts into a book of his own. He focused only on Jesus' teachings, not any of his mystical works or any of the miracles. It didn't include major scenes like the resurrection, the ascension to heaven, or miracles like turning water into wine or walking on water. Instead, Jefferson's Bible focused on Jesus as a man of morals, a teacher whose truths were expressed without the help of miracles or the supernatural powers of God. This, he felt, was the path to true character improvement and personal transformation, which, if followed, would bring all the blessings of an inspired life. For those of you who have tracked Buddhism at all in Gautama's life, he was often known to have done these sorts of miracles, and yet he never talked about it. What he talked about was character development. In our own time, Werner Erhard, anybody heard of him? Werner Erhard? A few nods, okay. Studied all the spiritual material and disciplines he could find, hoping that through rigorous study and practice he could find the elusive transformational model that would bring divine enlightenment and the powers that the great masters were said to have had. It was all inner work, focusing on the various character aspects that we've just talked about. And after decades of work and little or no results, he finally said, enough. And on his way to work one morning in the car, surrendered to whatever force for good was out there. Within hours, he began to notice that every thought that he had manifested almost immediately within a short period of time. And he felt a peace of mind never before imagined or experienced. His friends and associates looked on with absolute awe and said, what happened? He would have a thought, and there it was. It was that quick. And so impressed, he formed Earhart Seminars training in the late 60s and early 70s. It was known as EST, E-S-T, putting together the best transformational exercises of which he was aware. It all focused on internal character examination and focus, and grew throughout the self-help community like wildfire. Today it's known as the Landmark Forum, and is one of the best, most disciplined, and effective courses of self-improvement for creating a better life for yourself that I am aware of. And it's a comprehensive internal examination and search of your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions. Dr. David Hawkins, a medical doctor and psychiatrist. Yeah. After years of study, created a book called Power versus Force, which I've mentioned many, many times repeatedly in my talks. It outlines a scale of consciousness from the weakest and most miserable soul, just filled with guilt and shame, to the masters such as Buddhists and Jesus, who with a simply a thought can transform. And it's all inner work, examining our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, and focusing on character development. And he explains the process in great detail. When you look at the chart, if you think you're here, what's it take to go up a couple notches, or a few more after that? He explains it in the book. It's a must-read if you're interested in doing the work. And then, we're all familiar, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Oprah, so many more, all with messages of self-improvement through a personal spiritual practice of study, reflection, and of course the mantra, the motto, change your thoughts, change your life. Well, my message this morning is all about the path from clod to God. The spiritual journey. The one that, if you're here, you're on. And what I found in my life, and others have found in their lives, is that when we earnestly pursue a closer connection to God, we are given the material and we are given the teachers that we need at the time, corresponding to our level of understanding and everything else we need. It's been said that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And how this works is a mystery. But it's been true in my life. Jesus said, simply ask and it's given, seek and you'll find, knock and the door shall be open. It's true if you're willing to do the internal work. It's not hocus pocus magic or believe and be saved. It's an internal search. Now, don't worry too much about following somebody else's curriculum verbatim. That was their path, their insight, their journey. Find your own. Be willing to explore. Pick and choose what works for you. And I can assure you, you will get you what you need. Stay engaged. There are many paths up the mountain, grasshopper. So let's take a few moments right now. Let all that settle. All those 12-step programs. I think AA is the same way, the 12-step program. Why the number 12, I don't know. There were 12 disciples. There were 12 tribes. I think Moses forgot 2 of them when he came out with the 10 Commandments. But nevertheless, there is a path. There is a journey just for you. There is a spiritual guidance surrounding you this very moment. Ask and it is given. Seek and you shall find. There is something in each and every one of us. There is a dream. There is a desire. There is a goal. There is something within you that has been with you for a long time. Something you wanted to experience. Something you wanted to achieve. Take a moment now, and as you look back over your life, notice the times when the exact thing you were looking for showed up in a way that you could understand. And remember a time when a feeling went through you that said, that's it. It's just what I'm looking for. Not the 69 Corvette, but something else. An understanding, a way of being, a guidance. And that guidance is right here and right now, surrounding you with a loving energy. Some call it the still small voice. Some describe it as simply a thought. Choose that thought. Open that door. And simply know that the presence and the power of God operating through a hierarchy of celestial beings, guides, angels, archangels, who want you to succeed. They all want you to be that next step. And so this morning, right here and right now, simply know that you are guided always on a higher path for your benefit and for the benefit of everyone around you. Thank you, God. So it is. Sometimes I need a little bit of something between the meditation and I never script those things. They just.
I apologize.
That's all right. You're cool.
All right.
Well, now's the time in our service when we get an opportunity to practice gratitude, to practice prosperity, to simply give from our heart to overflowing. So I would encourage you to take those tithes and those offerings in your hand. And just repeat with me together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love and I receive in abundance.
Flow, Spirit flow. As I open up to be an expression of your unfolding peace, show, Spirit show me. As I open up to be
So we give thanks for these tithes and these offerings, so freely given from hearts filled and overflowing with abundance. And we know that they go forth to bless each and every one of us, and through us, to bless our families, to bless those that we work with and have friends with. And through us, through that glow that surrounds us, through those words that are simply the right thing to say at the right time, that calm, that heal, we go forward. Bless this church, bless this community, and bless this world. Thank you, God. So it is.
Show, Spirit, show through me as I open up to be an expression of your unfolding love.
So is there any way we can get a hold of Werner Earhart and help him manifest our little church here? And I do know one thing that will help. Next week, I will bring push pens for the bulletin.
I have them in my car.
Oh, good, okay. Today I want to tell you about Unity's regional annual retreat that happens in the fall. And this year it's going to be October 2nd through the 6th. And it is up at Lake Junaluska, which is a lovely facility. And it is called Enlighten Up, a New Thought About New Thought. I wanted to tell you about the great lineup that they have planned for this year. The keynote speaker is going to be Reverend Jim Blake, who is the CEO of Unity World Headquarters at Unity Village. He has published a new book called The Zen Executive, because most people would say that business and spirituality are actually two separate things. But in his book, he presents common sense ideas for aligning business practices with ancient spiritual principles. He talks about how we treat people and how we show up in the business world, and how leading with kindness and compassion actually empowers people, and it leads to a healthy work culture. Much like everything else coming out after the pandemic, he believes that this is a perfect time for a really significant shift in the way business and corporate leadership is done, and how one can coexist in these two worlds with integrity. And it's actually good for the bottom line. Opening night, we will hear from Reverend Darlene Strickland, who has a big church at Unity of the Blue Ridge in Asheville, North Carolina. She was the president of Doug's ministerial class, and she's really quite a wonderful speaker. And she is bringing along one of her powerhouse singers, Cat Williams. And Christy Snow and her band will also be there performing. On Wednesday night, the keynote will be Maggie Whitehouse. And she has published over 20 books. And she's also a regular writer for Unity Magazine. As a Franciscan, she has taught Judaic and Christian mysticism and original blessing worldwide. And Friar Richard Rohr says, Maggie is a much-needed 21st century pioneer of this important work. She has worked as a journalist in newspapers and on TV for the BBC World Service. She writes about herself, I've been widowed, divorced, healed from cancer, worked as a hospice chaplain, survived a barracuda attack at the Barrier Reef, and at the age of 56, I started doing stand-up comedy. But she teaches richly rewarding spiritual things in a way that makes them seem like you thought it. I think it's going to be a great retreat, and I have put the registration forms back on the center table if you are interested. I also would like all of you to mark your calendars 2 weeks from today, which is Father's Day. And if you have a special person person, the special man in your life who has served in that fatherly role, I would wish that you would invite them. And we also are going to have a celebration during the service for the completion of our 2 spirit groups that have been working in process to honor all of the participants. Following that service, we are going to serve up our 2nd annual Pancakes for Pop breakfast. And it's just a special day to say thank you to all the men. And I do want to tell you, ladies, the men get to stand first in line for that buffet. So Doug will be back next week right here at the Red Bank Community Center. And just as a final note, we still have items for sale in the back, and 100% of those proceeds go to the building fund. So now is the time in our service where we get to stand in place and sing the peace song. And I hope you'll join us for fellowship afterwards.
Together our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And remember, as you go forward this week, there is a path for you. Find it.